Hi, I'm Thomas Graves, and welcome to the Black Mold of Grief. This is episode 4, and in this episode, I'm going to share about losing my friend Jenny. When I went to college, my sophomore year, I met Jenny, who would become my best friend. And we actually met in a class. We were assigned to do a project together. And there was another couple that were assigned together to do another project. And I actually had a crush on that girl, and Jenny had a crush on her partner. So initially, we were trying to get each of us to set the other one up with the other person. But as we did that, and as we spent more time together, we got to know each other, and we started getting really, really close, really, really good friends. But the issue was, I think we went to the movies, and I asked Jenny if she wanted some candy, and she said she couldn't eat any because she had been diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. And in that moment, I just said, we can never be more than friends, because if we ever dated, fell in love, got married, I didn't know the stats of what juvenile diabetes life expectancy was at that time, but I knew or believed that she would have a short life. And I was like, I cannot deal with that again. So that was the issue. I just was not going to allow it to be more than friends, period, ever, in any way. And so we had a great time together. We laughed. It was easy. It was great. But there was a wall that Jenny didn't know about, because, again, at this point, I was 19. We were both 19. And I didn't talk about my first mom until I was 30. So I never explained that to Jenny. She would just run into this wall. And we started on this cycle together where we would spend a bunch of time together, have a great time. And then she would just look at me one day and say, I can't see you for a while. And I would say, okay. And I understood. And then we'd spend a month, 6-8 weeks apart. And then one of us would call each other just to check, see how we were doing. And then we would start calling more often, start seeing each other, hanging out. And that was the cycle for almost 13 years. And I remember one time, I think our junior year, she called me and she said, it was around Thanksgiving. It was right before Thanksgiving break. And she said, don't call me till after we get back from Christmas, because we've got finals. I need to focus, and I'm not going to be able to focus if you and I are talking. And I said, okay. And so, and we get back from Christmas, and I call her. And so we go to dinner at this place called the Filling Station, which was a burger joint that was, the theme was like a gas station. And so I can tell she's irritated with me, but I can't figure out why. And so we're talking, and so finally I said, well, how did finals go? And she says, actually, I had to take incompletes on everything because I ended up in ICU. I had a diabetic attack, and I was in there for almost 2 weeks. And then she just kind of let out. She said, and I'm really mad that you didn't ever call. And I just kind of sat there a second, and then I looked at her and I said, do you not remember? She said, remember what? And I said, that you called me right before Thanksgiving and said not to call you till after Christmas. And she started laughing, and she was like, and then as she was laughing, she's got this funny look on her face. And I looked at her and I said, you tore my number out of your phone book, didn't you?" And she was like, "It was worse than that." And so when she had gotten out of the hospital, um, she lived at the sorority house at the time. And so all of her sorority sisters were really mad at me. And so they tore the page out of her book, and they all went down to the bathroom and they put it in the kitchen sink and lit it on fire. And I was like, "I was just doing what you told me." And so we actually had a pretty good laugh about it. And so I said, "Do you want me to give you my phone number?" And we got a piece of paper and a pen from the waiter. And so I gave her the number again. But there were other times where she would invite me to a sorority function and whatnot. And there were times we went and had a good time as friends. And then there were other times when I would show up at the sorority house, and one of her sorority sisters would say, "Hang on a second." And so I'd be standing there, and she'd come down the stairs with this other girl who was usually, one of the younger sorority sisters, the little sisters, and say, "Jenny has, finals, or she has something, and, so she couldn't go, but she didn't want to stand you up. So, this is so-and-so, so she's going to be your date." And so we just cycled that way for a long time. And at one point, I had ended up moving to Georgia and had come back to Dallas to visit because Chuck and my sister Catherine were there, and that is where Jenny was living at the time. This is after college. And so Chuck had a party for me with a bunch of my friends, and so Jenny was there. And after the party, or at the end of the party, I walked Jenny out to her car, and then I came back in the house, and everybody was just looking at me. And Chuck is like, "What are you doing in Georgia? Why do you not come back to Dallas and marry this girl?" And again, at this point, Chuck and I had never had a conversation about our mom or anything. And, the conflict inside of me of keeping my promise versus breaking my promise was still like totally unresolved. And so I was just avoiding it. So I didn't even really answer him. And I think I just went in the other room or something. And so a couple of months later, that was around Christmas, Jenny was a retail manager. And so she'd had a bunch of comp time from working a bunch over Christmas. So she called me and said, "Can I come visit you in Georgia?" And I just knew it was the last attempt to get this to be more than friends. And I still wasn't honest enough to tell her this is never going to happen. So, and I had kind of rationalized it in my head that as long as I didn't take advantage of her feelings, and as long as I kept it strictly platonic, then I wasn't using her, which in some way was true. But at the same time, I never said this is not going to happen. And so in that way, I did string her along. But so when she came to Georgia, I was renting a house at the time and had a roommate. So she comes in, and I take her luggage to my room, and I said, "Okay, well, you're in here and I'm on the couch." And I could tell she was just disappointed. But I had a bunch of friends coming over that night to meet her and had a party, and Jenny was amazing. I mean, she knew that was between us. And so she was outgoing and energetic and engaging and great conversationalist. And so everybody thought she was awesome, which she was. She didn't let that, dampen anything, and didn't, ruin it for anybody. And because I had a roommate, even after the party, all weekend, she was upbeat. And on Sunday, when we got in the car to drive to Atlanta, we were about 2 hours south. It was just dead silence. And literally for the 2 hours, it was completely silent for the first hour. And then she just said, I am not going to be able to talk to you for a long time, and I hope you understand. And I said, okay. And then for the next hour, it was complete silence. And so when I dropped her off, and this is when you were still able to walk people to the gate, I walked her to the gate and I went to hug her, and she just shook my hand and said, good luck songwriting. And that was the last time I saw her and the last thing I said to her. And so about 2 years, a year later, I guess, I moved to Nashville, and I went on, I guess, so yeah, a year later I moved to Nashville. And then a year after that, I went on a 3-day church retreat. And cognitively, I always knew that not discussing my mom was totally connected to the situation with Jenny. Like I knew it. But because I hadn't ever felt anything about my first mom and I'd bottled everything up, I didn't connect emotionally with the situation and what I was creating with Jenny from her perspective, because I just didn't feel anything about all that. I was just friends with Jenny. That was it. So this 3-day retreat was really the first time I was feeling anything about any of that. So when I got home, I realized, okay, I need to call Jenny and just apologize. And I just need to explain to her that it wasn't her, that this is totally connected to my first mom, and just have that conversation with her. And I was in no way wanting to become romantic with her, and that was not the point of the conversation, to say, hey, we should give this a try. It was truly just, I'm sorry that I never was honest with you. So this was before cell phones, and Jenny had been living with her sister Debbie the last time I talked to her. And I wasn't really sure how Debbie felt about me, because again, I never took advantage of Jenny, but I was never totally honest with her either. So when I called, I got the answering machine. I was like, Debbie might erase this message. So I didn't leave a message. And I called a few days later, same thing. And then I called a couple days after that, and Debbie answered. And I said, is Jenny there? And there was this long pause, and she said, can I ask who's calling? And I said, this is Tom. And she said, is this Tom from Georgia? And I said, yeah. And she said, Jenny passed away about 6 weeks ago. And she went on to tell me that after Jenny had come back from Georgia, it was what I had expected. It was Jenny's last attempt. And when it didn't happen, she was like, all right, I'm done. And so, as she should have. And Debbie was an architect, and she designed high-end luxury homes in Dallas. And one of her clients, she felt like would be a good fit for Jenny. And so she set him up on a blind date, and they hit it off really, really well. And so they were actually engaged. And Debbie said that Jenny had tried to find me to invite me to the wedding, but because I had moved to Nashville at that point, she had no way of finding me. But she was in a room at Debbie's house, getting something out of her closet, and then her heart gave out, and she fell in her bed and passed away. And that was 2 weeks before her wedding. And so she said her fiance was so distraught over the whole thing that within that time frame, he had already sold his house, sold his business, and moved back to Philadelphia. And when I heard that, I was actually very, very grateful to him, because for someone to have to leave Dallas because he couldn't live in that big of a city without her. He had to truly, truly love her. I mean, and because at that point he was already gone. So I don't know if he had sold his house and the business within 4 weeks or whatever, but he booked it out of there because he just didn't want to be in Dallas without Jenny. And she deserved to be loved like that. And if I couldn't do it, I was grateful to him that he had. And I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him other than that. But I am glad that she experienced that. And, you know, when I don't share the story a lot, but when I do, you know, people kind of focus on how sad it was that she passed away 2 weeks before her wedding. But I focus on the fact that she was truly happy and that she had found true happiness with him. And so I just am grateful that she had that. Skylar Harris did the soul version, and this is the version that I sent out to everybody when I was approaching them about joining the album. And what was funny is a lot of people would email me back and say, why are you recutting this? This version's amazing. Or I don't know that I can do better than that. And so I would have to explain to them, okay, I don't want you to replace this version. I want you to do your version. But that is how impressive her version is. And it was basically just her and then a friend of mine, Mason Ambry, who did the piano. And so it's just a piano vocal, but they both just played and sang. And Mason suggested that they do it without a click track. And so they recorded it live together. And so it feels like you're in, you know, the Kennedy Center or Carnegie Hall or something where it's just this live performance and it feels live and it just has a totally different feel. It's very intimate. And at the end, I asked Skylar, you know, can you sing the word I up high as you can, hold it without vibrato, and then at the very end, just do a one long run from the top all the way down to the bottom. And she did. And when she did it, Mason and I and the engineer looked at each other like, okay, she did it. And it's one of my favorite parts of the whole song. And every time I listen to the song, like I wait for that one part.
If I don't make a change, I'll meet you in the clouds, and this emptiness will be all I talk about. You would understand, but I'd be ashamed if you brought your smile and I brought my pain to our first conversation in heaven. I wanna bring you joy. I wanna bring you joy. I don't care how tough it is, I am gonna live, 'cause I wanna bring you joy. I wanna bring you joy.
Thank you for tuning into the Black Mold of Grief. In next week's episode, I'm going to share a shift in my mindset that helped me heal. In the meantime, I hope something I've said helps you bring a little more joy to your first conversation in heaven. and I hope to see you next time.